Many of the voices you hear during this season of Bigfoot Classified are performed by Ukrainian actors and actresses as a deliberate effort to support their talent and contribution to the entertainment industry. We recognize that the Dyatlov Pass incident, a real-life tragedy, occurred in Russia. The decision to cast Ukrainian actors and actresses is intended to provide them with support and recognition for their contributions while adding an authentic feel to this season of Bigfoot Classified. We acknowledge the significance of the Dyatlov Pass incident and extend our condolences to the victims and their families.
Bigfoot Classified contains content that is graphic in nature, and listener discretion is advised. Bigfoot Classified relies largely on news documents, eyewitness accounts, press conferences, and interviews. Every episode is produced with respect to the victims, families, and communities involved. Some of the interviews, quotes, and broadcasts have been recreated. Numerous hours of research have been done regarding these stories. And if you have a theory, question, or feel that we've missed something, we encourage you to visit BigfootClassified.com. This is Bigfoot Classified.
One of history's greatest mysteries is the 1959 Dyatlov Pass incident, which cost the lives of 9 cross-country skiers. Today, a variety of theories are put forth, including monstrous snowmen, UFOs, covert Soviet military experiments, scientific concepts, and even an avalanche. Everyone gets a chance to suggest a solution, and everyone gets a chance to be incorrect. They can all agree simply that on that night of February 2nd, 1959, something terrible happened.
To recap, an intended 200-mile expedition through the Ural Mountains in the old Soviet Union gave way to the tragedy. The party of seasoned hikers, including a 37-year-old instructor and 9 students in their 22nds from the Ural Polytechnic Institute, was led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, who handpicked a team of 9 other experienced hikers and outdoorsmen to accompany him. The only women were Lyudmila Dubinina, 20, and Zinaida Kolmogorova, 22. Lyudmila majored in finance, whereas Zinaida studied radio engineering. Yuri Doroshenko, 21, and Yuri Yudin, 22, were both economic students. Nuclear physics student Alexander Kolvetov was 24 years old. 23-year-old engineering students Yuri Krivonishenko, Rustam Slobodin, and Nicholas Thibox-Brignol joined, and lastly, Semen Zolotaryov, a sports instructor and World War II veteran who was 38 years old. On January 23, 1959, the group set out on their expedition. One student had to return home early owing to illness, while the others continued their walk to Kalatsiaks, where they would camp out for the night. Igor Dyatlov had previously agreed to inform the UPI Sports Club as soon as his team arrived at their base without incident on or about February 12th. No one was initially worried when they didn't arrive back on schedule. Due to inclement weather, they had already been delayed. There was no immediate response when the deadline of February 12th passed without a message being sent, because delays of a few days were typical in such excursions. But Dyatlov had previously informed Yudin that he anticipated to remain longer. It made no sense to put lives in danger in order to send out searchers when they expected the group to be a day or two late. To reassure Lyudmila and Alexander's parents, Lev Semyonovich Gordo, the head of UPI Sports Club, even claimed to have received a telegram from Dyatlov informing him of the delay. He anticipated that the hikers would return in a few days. In the end, relatives were compelled to form a search party after reporting to the Communist Party's local leader. Unwanted negative publicity required action, which had to be taken. Only after the families of the missing hikers urged a rescue effort did the head of the institute deploy the first volunteer student and teacher-led rescue groups on February 20th. Later, the army and police forces got involved, and helicopters and planes were instructed to join the rescue effort. Colonel Georgy Semyonovich Ortyukov, head of UPI's military division, was put in charge of the search and rescue team. Many students offered to help look for their missing hikers. On February 21st, several rescue teams were dispatched to the area. Blinov and Sagarin were the leaders of one of these organizations. Both groups were familiar with the region's conditions and had just returned from their visits. Vladislav Kerlin was in the vicinity with another group, and they joined the hunt. to conduct an aerial search for the group. Aircraft search and rescue departed from Evil Airport. With the help of student volunteers, Oleg Grebenik, Moises Axelrod, and Boris Slapkov created 3 additional groups for UPI. 4 local Mansi hunters were also hired for a total of 500 rubles to assist in the search for the missing party. Along with other experts, Moscow dispatched EP, Maslenikov, Baskin, Bardin, and Shoshenko. Boris Slapkov's group was dropped off on February 23rd close to Mount Atortin, the party's eventual goal. Sport skis first tracks were found. A location that the Dyatlov group most likely used for an overnight campout was discovered. They arrived at the mountain the following day, on February 24th, and determined that tourists never made it this far. None of the records, flags, or other items that would have pointed to a recent group visit was discovered by the students. While everyone else searched for hints regarding the direction of future searches, some members began to prepare dinner. They discovered 710 rubles as well as train tickets for some of the group members. The search party saw this discovery as a win. If they had been robbed, then surely the money would be gone too. On February 26th on the slope of Kolatsiaks, they found the tent used by the hikers. Ironically, Slapkov was one of those who, 3 years previously, helped Dyatlov build the tent from 2 tents, lengthening and enlarging it. He knew what it was right away. The rescue team found a stove inside the tent that Dyatlov had built himself. The rescue team noticed immediately that the tent had been cut open from the inside. Whoever had been inside the tent, for one reason or another, had desperately escaped. It is difficult to understand why they chose this odd exit before exiting the tent, oblivious of the entrance. One of the searchers noted that the cuts in the tent were made in slices 40 centimeters long. The searchers noted that if these slices were done in a single cut, that would require a very large knife, maybe with a blade as long as 16 inches, depending on how sharp it was. A smaller blade could have done it, but only by sawing, which makes a cut that is more ragged, which doesn't match the slices made in the canvas of the tent. Whatever had happened, many of the hikers weren't fully dressed and definitely not prepared to brace for the extreme weather when they left the tent. Boots, shoes, sweaters, and knives were all left behind. In actuality, the majority of the clothing and shoes were heaped in the tent's center and perimeter. Additionally, Boris Slapkov found a Chinese-made flashlight which was working fine. He couldn't understand why such important equipment had been left behind. 3 cameras, a group diary, some booze, and other small items were taken from the tent by the students. Mikhail Sherovin, who had been helicoptered to the area to assist with the search and was part of the team who found the tent, recounted.
We had gone about 500 meters when on the left I saw the tent. Part of the canvas was poking out, but the rest was covered in snow. I used an ice pick lying nearby to uncover the entrance. He and another rescuer entered and discovered a blanket, several rucksacks neatly arranged, and a pile of boots in the corner. The trip map, official documents, money, and an alcohol flask were also present. A platter of salo, or white pork fat, which is a Slavic delicacy and the type of high-calorie food that hikers bring into the mountains, was next to it. According to Sherovin, it was sliced up as if they were getting ready to have dinner or something and didn't have time. The tent had been slashed open from the inside with a knife, he realized at that point. He pondered that perhaps they were frantically trying to go, but why? After that, he discovered something even odd. Sherovin noticed frozen tracks produced by 8 or 9 persons who were either barefoot, wearing a single boot, or wearing socks right outside the tent. After a distance of 5 to 10 meters, the tracks vanished. Sherovin and his companion were confused at this find, when it was at least minus 20 degrees Celsius outside. They questioned what on earth could have caused the students to leave their refuge wearing only a light jacket.
Unfortunately, no one attempted to save or record the tourists' footsteps near the Dyatlov Pass because no one anticipated finding them dead. The precise number of persons in this pass on that tragic day is still up for debate. However, based on the statements of those involved in the search, there were unquestionably 8-9 tracks of footprints left by tourists who were wearing essentially no shoes. They left distinctive columns of crushed snow with a footprint on top after pressing the snow with their feet. The gang was walking in a single file, with a tall man at the back. His steps somewhat obscured those of his pals who had preceded him. Overall, the trail gave the impression of being well organized and smooth as it descended the mountainside. Several trails would diverge from the main path before coming back together. Additionally, additional footprints were found and documented. It is difficult to tell if these were abandoned by rescuers or someone else. They radioed back about their find at the Dyatlov group's final encampment around 6 o'clock in the evening. They were advised by UPI that a sizable search team will be flown by helicopter to their location. In addition, 2 enormous military tents would be delivered for further security and comfort. Colonel Ortyukov would join the search and rescue operation together with the detective. They promptly skied downwards back to regroup and share what they had found with the rest of the searchers. Sharavin brought out the flask of vodka he had discovered in the tent and offered a toast to the well-being of the Dyatlov group later, as they sat around the campfire for their evening meal. "We shared it out between us, there were 11 of us, including the guides," he recalls. "We were about to drink it when one guy turned to me and said, 'Best not drink to their health, but to their eternal peace.'" The man was Ivan Paskin, a local who was assisting in the efforts. He was actually beaten up for his comments. No one could or would admit that such learned hikers could perish so easily. The same day that the tent was found, Nina Sergeyevna Anasimova, sister of Alexander Kolvetov, signed a telegram that was addressed to Nikita Sergeyevich Khrushchev on February 26th and pleas for authorities to launch a rescue effort.
Dear Nikita Sergeyevich, by the shouted date on February 9, a group of hikers from the Polytechnic Institute of Sverdlovsk did not return from an expedition in the northern Urals. Such began late only after 10 days had passed. Regional organization have not yet taken effective measures. We earnestly request your assistance in the urgent search for our children. Every heart counts now.
You might have noticed that the date of expected return for the group says February 9th. When we know it was February 12th, well, one of Kolvetov's sisters decided it was better to predate the return by a couple of days in order to create more urgency around the situation. The families of the hikers knew something was wrong, and they were desperate to get as much help as they could in the search. On February 27th, the telegram was displayed in the Kremlin, and the efforts worked. The search and rescue effort reached the highest levels as a result, and a special report on the incident and search was issued the following day by the Minister of the Interior of the RSFSR.
During the winter break, a group of students from the Ural Polytechnic Institute, Sverdlovsk, consisting of 9 people, left for the Avdel district of the Sverdlovsk region to undertake a 300 km ski trip along the road north of Vidal in the area of mountain Otota. On January 28, the group left from village Burmantova, 17 kilometers north of mountain Avdel, with provision to last till February 14. On February 19, the institute appealed to local party and Soviet authorities asking for help in finding the missing students. To that point, Department of International Affairs of Sverdlovsk region didn't know anything about the missing hikers. Search groups including trained skiers, athletes from the institute and rockers from the Avdel Correctional Labor Camp. The search dogs were dropped by helicopters in the area of mountain Otota. On February 26, on the south face of the mountain, rescuers found tents with skis, ice axe, cameras, blankets and provisions, and on February 27, 1 kilometer from away, for corpses covered with snow. The searches continue. Participants and 46 athletes, skiers, airplanes and helicopters and dispatched to aid in the search. Sverdlovsk Regional Committee of CPSU established a commission to oversee the organization of the search and investigation of the reason for the death of the students.
The following morning, searchers Michael Sharavin and Yuri Koptylov set out to find a new campground. They were looking around the Lozva River valley when they noticed a tall cedar tree. The search party might have a better perspective of the mountain and surrounding areas if they were to gather in a rather level, broad area close to the cedar. Both men paused as they got close to the cedar. The remains of the fire could be seen nearby, and 2 bodies were lying in the snow. Due to the persistent wind in this area, the snow wasn't particularly thick, making it abundantly evident that they had discovered 2 of the missing groups dead, Doroshenko and Krivonishenko. They were virtually entirely clothed except for shoes. Strangely, 5 meters up the trunk, the branches of a neighboring tree had been shattered. Had they ascended it to obtain a better view of the area? or to get away from something. On their hands, they both looked to have burns which were later noted in their autopsy reports. 400 meters from the cedar, evil prosecutor Vasily Ivanovich Templov found another body. The body was immediately identified as the group's leader, Igor Dyatlov. Dyatlov was lying on his back with his head looking toward the tent. About 500 meters from Dyatlov, Mansi hunters with their dogs began to investigate the mountainside. They soon found Zina Kolmogorova's body. Her body was positioned so that it was facing the tent. The bodies of Dyatlov and Kolmogorova were next to each other between a tent and a tree. It became clear that both tourists had actually attempted to return to the tent from the tall cedar. But something or someone had stopped them. Igor Dyatlov's autopsy concluded the following.
Based on the data discovered from the examination of the body of Igor Alexeyevich Dyatlov, 23 years old, and considering the circumstance of the case, we think Dyatlov died as a result of hypothermia, freezing signified by the edema of the meninges, the sharp hyperemia of the internal organs, the filling of the heart cavities with liquid dark blood, the presence of Vishnevsky spot on the gastric mucosa, the overfilled bladder, and 3 and 4 degree frostbite on the extremities. The damage discovered during the external examination in the form of graze wounds, scratches, and skin wounds were caused by a blunt object and might have happened as the result of a fall and bruising by stones, ice, etc. The above-mentioned damage was caused both during life, as well as in the agonal and post-mortem state. The above-mentioned injuries and light and not damage to health. The date of the examination of the body of Dyatlov shows that his last meal was 6-8 hours before there. The investigation discovered no presence of alcohol. The cause of death is by violence accident.
The Dyatlov group's belongings from the tent were taken out in the meantime, without any organization, witnesses, or even the presence of law enforcement. This transpired haphazardly. Students just removed the items and made an effort to sort them by name. We can understand their sincere wish to return these items to the deceased's relatives, but by doing so, they jeopardize all future research in this field. Only a few of the individuals who carried out these crimes have provided testimony. Some of them caused greater confusion since they were incompatible. They learned that the gang appeared to be getting ready to eat. There was also a self-made newspaper called Evening Autorten. The day was noted as February 1st. 1959. A strange and unexpected discovery was a ski pole with obvious cutting marks. Why someone with a rational mind would purposefully destroy the pole remains a mystery. Along with other items, travelers also abandoned their shoes. Many carried 2 pairs. One for the trip itself and the second, softer, for use inside the tent at night to stay warm. Both sets were discovered to be missing. This could be explained by the fact that whatever compelled them out of the tent happened just as everyone was getting ready for bed and changing. Knives and hatchets were also seen in the tent. For some reason, these were also abandoned, despite the fact that several visitors brought knives with them when they left. The search did not turn up any results the following week. Another Chinese flashlight was the only thing that was found in the Lozva Valley. Although the batteries were dead, the flashlight button was set to on. 3 students and 2 Mansi hunters found a camp base or lab base in the Ospia Valley on March 2nd. To minimize the load, it looks like the group had left part of their food supplies and equipment weighing around 55 kilograms in total. Rustam Slobodin's mandolin, a few pieces of clothing, a pair of skis, and ski boots were also there. Tourists expected to pick up these items on the way back. However, none of these items was taken. Many of the students left Dyatlov Pass for their homes on March 3rd because they had to get back to their academics. Moscow experts also departed. Their report is quite brief and ambiguous. They were unable to explain why several regular folks would leave the tent in the middle of the night without shoes or much wind protection. Rustam Slobodin's body was discovered in the Dyatlov Pass on March 5th. He was positioned between Dyatlov's and Kolmogorova's bodies, 180 meters apart. His head detached from his body, melting the snow, which then froze, creating a frozen bed beneath the corpse. His autopsy noted the following. Rustam Slobodin wore a black sweater, long-sleeve shirt black and red square with a passport, another shirt underneath, 2 pairs of pants with 4 pairs of socks, 2 insoles from boots. It was a common way to dry insoles using body heat. Unlike previous bodies, he wore 1 boot on his right leg. His watch stopped at 8:45 a.m. His pockets had 310 rubles and a passport. Additionally, searchers discovered a knife, pen, pencil, comb, and a matchbox with a single sock. Cadaverous blue-red spots are abundantly located on the back of the neck, trunk, and limbs. The bodies of both travelers were found next to a put-out fire. They had a portion of their clothing carefully removed. Yuri Krivonishenko's pants were left on. They displayed some level of radioactivity. The team of search and rescue volunteers noticed some weird shimmering, pulsing orbs in the sky on March 31. Valentin Yakaimenko, one of the group, gave a description of what happened. It occurred in the early hours of the morning, while it was still dark, after leaving the tent at night to keep watch. Viktor Meshayekov noticed a huge light sphere in the sky. He made everyone awake. It took us around 20 minutes of watching for this orb or disk to stop vanishing behind the mountain. From our tent, we could see it to the southeast. It was heading north as it moved. Everyone was terrified by this occurrence. We were certain that this incident contributed in some way to the Dyatlov group's demise. Meanwhile, the hunt for the final 4 bodies went on. Few members of the search party were hopeful about their future. It was said that numerous scientists used a Geiger counter to search for radiation on the Kalatsiaks and Dyatlov Pass slopes. Since Krivonishenko was missing his garments, it was suspected that his sweater and pants were radioactively contaminated. Theoretically, finding a radioactive source could aid in finding any remaining bodies. Who could have informed them that radiation might be present in the Dyatlov Pass is still unknown. The time is a further query. While some witnesses assert that the scientists arrived before the last 4 deaths were found, others assert that they arrived after the dead were discovered to search the area for potential radiation sources. Unfortunately, the final 4 bodies weren't found until May of that year, stumbled upon by a Mansi native who was out with his dog. The discovery of the final 4 bodies gave no answers, just more and more questions. Lyudmila Dubinina, Alexander Kolvatov, Nikolai Thibox-Brignol, and Seaman Zolotev were found at the bottom of a ravine, in a stream of moving water. It looked like the group had tried to create some kind of den to hide before they met their demise. Their autopsy report showed extensive injuries among the 4. Nikolai Thibox-Brignol died after extensive damage to his skull. The autopsy, performed by Vozrozhdeny, ruled out accidental falls on the rock as a potential reason for such a large and uncommon fracture. Some hypothesized that the shape could be the result of pressure from an avalanche that allegedly struck unaware travelers while they slept in the tent. If Nikolai had been sleeping on a camera, the abrupt increase in pressure might have left a mark on his head, but because the lens is rounded, any damage would also be more rounded. A significant hemorrhage that would prevent Thibox-Brignol from being able to move independently and leave the location of the tent is another reason why several physicians rejected this notion. Footprints indicate that everyone in the group moved on their own 2 feet because there was no evidence of dragging in the snow. After the autopsy of Nikolai Thibox-Brignol, Vozrozhdeny was interrogated over his findings. Here is the transcript.
What could have caused injuries that Nikolai Thibox-Brignol suffered? Well, he could have been thrown down from a height of a grown man. He might have slipped and fell. However, very deep fracture of the skull base suggests that his injuries are similar to a victim that was dropped with a great speed and strength from a quickly moving car. Could we assume that he was hit by a rock that was held by another man? In this case, we would see damaged soft tissue, and we don't see that on the body.
If Vozrozhdeny doesn't believe Nikolai's death was not caused by blunt force by another person, then what extreme force of nature could have occurred? Both the group's youngest member, Lyudmila Dubinina, and its oldest, Seaman Zolotaryov, suffered broken ribs and significant chest injuries. Lyudmila's tongue was missing, and both of them had their eyes removed. Lyudmila's autopsy was met with criticism, with the public and the press citing it as being too vague. Her autopsy concluded by saying, based on the research of a corpse, Dubinina's death was the result of extensive hemorrhage, ravy ventricle, multiple bilateral rib fractures, sealing elements of internal bleeding into the chest cavity. In her autopsy, it mere said the tongue is missing and didn't really elaborate any further. Now, it wasn't like Lyudmila had simply bit her tongue in pain and had maybe bitten too hard and some of the muscle has torn. No, her whole tongue was gone, ripped from her head. Whatever force Vozrozhdeny had indicated that killed Nikolai had definitely gotten to Lyudmila too. Alexander Kolvatov was found with no eyebrows. His neck was twisted and he had a large gash behind his ear. His autopsy was concluded with, based on the research of a corpse Kolvatova, I believe that his death was caused by exposure to low temperature. However, according to documents leaked to Russian media, A doctor who examined the remains claimed the impact of whatever struck him was equal to the effect of a car crash. The finding of the last 4 hikers was a big turning point in the case. Up until this point, people had believed the line that the deaths were caused by misadventure rather than anything else. The first 5 bodies, we all remember as being partially undressed, was explained away as them all experiencing the phenomenon known as paradoxical undressing. Paradoxical undressing is when, despite being absolutely freezing, a person will suddenly feel warm, really warm, sweating, and in a panic will remove their clothes to try and cool down. But like I said, the finding of the remaining hikers changed this. Everyone who attended the funerals for all 9 hikers stated that the bodies were unusually dark brick red in hue with their hair having grayed. This was officially dismissed as a normal effect of exposure to the outdoors, but suspicions remained. Although one of the rescuers revealed that his radiation detector had detected extremely high radiation levels near Kármán CX, the radiation source was kept a secret. Investigators and the general public initially theorized that the attack was carried out by an indigenous Mansi tribe from the area. On 3 counts, this notion was shown to be false. First off, the Mansi people have a reputation for being nonviolent and peaceful. Second, it would be impossible for a human to use the force necessary to cause some of the members damage. Thirdly, the number of footprints was insufficient to locate every lost hiker.
However, on May 28, 1959, the case of the Dyatlov Pass incident was closed. The medical examiner ultimately found that 3 of the group's fatal injuries and 6 of the group's members' deaths were caused by hypothermia. 6 to 8 hours after their last meal, they all died. Authorities claimed that the tent was torn open from the inside and that there were no signs of any other people nearby. The medical examiner's final conclusion was that each member of the group had passed away as a result of a compelling unknown force. So, the case was closed, and with little answers, the families and wider public were angry. What was the rush to close the case so soon? Well, we'll find out in part 3 as we dive deep into the conspiracies and theories surrounding the Dyatlov Pass incident.